November 2019, when rancher Cole Bennett spotted a stranger in his stable at dawn, signing silently to his most aggressive stallion. He should have called the sheriff, but the horse was completely calm for the first time in months. The deaf woman had a gift no one could explain, speaking to animals in ways that defied logic. But when armed men surrounded his ranch one frozen night, could her mysterious connection to his horses be the only thing standing between Cole and a bullet? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The November frost had settled thick across the Montana grasslands when Cole Bennett first saw her. He'd risen before dawn, as he always did, the cold air biting at his lungs as he made his way from the ranch house to the stables. The Bennett Ranch had been in his family for 4 generations, sprawling across 800 acres of rough terrain where the mountains met the plains. It wasn't an easy life, but it was the only one Cole had ever known or wanted. At 42, he carried the weathered look of a man who'd spent most of his days under an unforgiving sun. His hands were calloused from years of mending fences, breaking horses, and holding onto a legacy that seemed to slip a little further from his grasp each season. Cattle prices had been dropping, and the bank had started sending letters with increasing frequency. But Cole was stubborn. Stubbornness ran in the Bennett blood, and he'd be damned if he'd be the generation that lost it all. The stable door was slightly ajar when he approached, which immediately set his nerves on edge. He was meticulous about security, especially since Diablo had arrived 6 months ago. The black stallion had been a mistake, though Cole had been too proud to admit it at the time. He'd bought the horse at auction for a price that made his ranch hand, Tommy, whistle low and shake his head. The seller had been too eager. Cole realized later to part with the animal. Diablo was magnificent, standing 17 hands high with a coat that gleamed like polished obsidian. But he was also unpredictable, aggressive, and had already sent 2 experienced handlers to the emergency room. Cole had considered selling him a dozen times, but something kept him from making the call. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was the hope that beneath all that rage was a horse worth the trouble. He pushed the stable door open slowly, expecting to find Tommy already at work, though it would be unusual for him to arrive this early. Instead, what he saw made him freeze in the doorway. A woman stood in Diablo's stall. She had her back to him, her dark hair pulled into a loose braid that fell between her shoulder blades. She wore faded jeans and a canvas jacket that had seen better days. But what stopped Cole's breath wasn't her appearance, it was what she was doing. Her hands moved through the air in fluid, deliberate gestures. Not random movements, but something purposeful, methodical. Sign language, Cole realized, though he'd never seen it used quite like this. She wasn't signing to another person. She was signing to his horse, and Diablo, the stallion that would bare his teeth and charge at anyone who came within 10 feet, stood perfectly still. His ears were forward, attentive. His dark eyes tracked every movement of her hands. There was no tension in his powerful muscles, no warning stomp of his hooves. He looked almost peaceful. Cole's hand instinctively moved to his hip, where he usually kept his phone, ready to call for help or at least document what he was seeing. But he found himself hesitating. Something about the scene felt sacred, like witnessing something he wasn't meant to see. The woman's hands continued their silent conversation, and Diablo responded by lowering his massive head, allowing her to place her palm flat against his forehead. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Cole's voice shattered the moment like a rock through glass. The woman spun around, her eyes wide with surprise. They were striking eyes, a shade of green that reminded him of the creek behind his property in spring. Fear flashed across her face, but it was quickly replaced by something else: resignation, maybe, or acceptance of being caught where she shouldn't be. She opened her mouth as if to speak, then closed it again. Her hands moved instead, signing something Cole couldn't understand. When he stared at her blankly, she reached slowly into her jacket pocket. Cole tensed, but she only pulled out a small notepad and a pencil. She wrote quickly and held it up for him to see. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to trespass. I couldn't sleep and I felt him calling." Cole read the words twice, his confusion deepening. "You felt him calling?" He gestured toward Diablo. "The horse?" She nodded, writing again. "I know how it sounds. I can explain, but not here. He's been in pain. His back left leg. Old injury, never healed right. It affects his behavior." Cole's skepticism must have shown on his face because she wrote something else. "Check his leg. You'll see I'm right." Against his better judgment, Cole approached the stall. Diablo's ears flicked back as he drew near. And the stallion shifted his weight, the usual warning signs that meant stay back or suffer the consequences. But the woman placed her hand on Diablo's neck and signed something. And the horse settled again. Cole knelt carefully, running his hand down the stallion's back left leg. At first, he felt nothing unusual. Then his fingers found it, a slight swelling just above the fetlock, warm to the touch. He pressed gently and Diablo flinched, but didn't lash out. How had he missed this? How had the vet missed this during the last checkup? He stood up slowly, brushing the dirt from his jeans, his mind racing with questions. "Who are you?" The woman was already writing. "My name is Alina Rosewood. I'm staying at the motel in town. I arrived 3 days ago. And you just decided to break into my stable at 5 in the morning?" She shook her head, writing more frantically now. "I didn't break in. The door was open. I've been walking at night because I can't sleep. I felt something pulling me here. I know this sounds crazy, but I can hear them. Not with my ears, I'm deaf. But I can feel what they're feeling. Their pain, their fear, their needs. It's always been this way." Cole studied her face, looking for signs of deception or instability. He found neither. What he saw was exhaustion etched into the lines around her eyes, and something else, a deep, bone-weary loneliness that he recognized because he'd seen it in his own mirror often enough. "You're telling me you can talk to horses?" She wrote again, "Not talk, understand. There's a difference. And they can understand me in their own way. The movements, the signs, it's a language they can read through body mechanics and intention." The sun was beginning to rise now, pale light filtering through the gaps in the stable walls. Cole could hear the other horses stirring in their stalls, the soft sounds of morning routines beginning. He should call the sheriff. This woman was trespassing, and her story was impossible. Except Diablo was still calm, which was itself impossible. "That injury," Cole said, pointing at the horse's leg. "How did you know about it?" Elena's hands moved as she wrote. "He told me." Not in words, but in the way he held himself. The tension in his muscles, the heat signature, the way he wouldn't put full weight on it. Animals communicate constantly, we just don't know how to listen. And the signing? Why sign to a horse? Because they respond to clear, consistent body language. Signing is precise, intentional. It cuts through the confusion of human verbalization that they can't process. My deafness isn't a disability with them, it's an advantage. I experience the world the way they do, without the distraction of sound. Cole ran a hand through his hair, trying to process what he was hearing. Every logical bone in his body said this was nonsense. But Diablo was the evidence that something unexplainable was happening here. The stallion had been a terror for 6 months, and now he stood like a gentle giant beside this stranger. "Where did you learn this?" Cole asked. "Is this some kind of training technique?" Elena wrote for a longer time now, filling nearly half a page. "I didn't learn it. I was born profoundly deaf. My parents were hearing, and they didn't know sign language when I was young. I spent a lot of time alone, frustrated, unable to communicate. We lived on a small farm in Oregon. I started spending time with the animals because they didn't care that I couldn't hear or speak like others. One day, I realized I could feel what our old Mare was feeling: her arthritis, her loneliness when the other horses were moved to a different field. I started signing to her, practicing the SL I was learning in school, and she responded. She understood. From then on, it just developed. I've never met anyone else who experiences it the same way. Cole took the notepad from her hands and wrote his own question. Why are you in Whitefish? What brought you here? Elena's expression darkened. She took the notepad back and wrote simply, running from something. Looking for somewhere to disappear. Before Cole could press for more information, the stable door swung open fully and Tommy walked in, coffee thermos in one hand and his phone in the other. He stopped short when he saw Elena standing in Diablo's stall. Boss, who's this? Tommy was in his mid-20s, built like the college linebacker he'd once been. His hand moved instinctively to the utility knife on his belt. It's all right, Tommy, Cole said, though he wasn't sure why he was defending her. This is ... Elena. She was just showing me something about Diablo's leg. He's got an injury we missed. Tommy's expression shifted from suspicion to concern. He approached the stall cautiously. Diablo immediately tensed, his ears pinning back. Elena signed something quickly, but the stallion wasn't having it. He snorted and stamped, showing his teeth. Whoa there, easy, Tommy said, backing off immediately. He looked at Cole. Since when does he let anyone near him? Since about 10 minutes ago, Cole admitted. He turned to Elena. Can you do that with all horses or just troubled ones? She wrote, all animals to varying degrees. But the ones in pain or fear are loudest. They need help, and I can usually provide it, or at least offer comfort. An idea was forming in Cole's mind, one that seemed crazy even as he considered it. The ranch was struggling. He had 12 horses in various states of training, including 3 that were proving as difficult as Diablo. If this woman could actually do what she claimed, if she could help him understand and work with these animals, maybe she could help turn things around. Maybe she could save the ranch, and maybe, just maybe, he could offer her the place to disappear that she seemed to be searching for. Can you work with the others? He asked. The other horses here? Elena looked uncertain. She wrote, I could try. But I should warn you, when I help them, I feel what they feel. It's exhausting. And some memories, some pain. It's hard to carry. I'll pay you, Cole said suddenly. Room and board, plus wages. I've got a foreman's cabin that's empty. Nothing fancy, but it's warm and private. You help me understand these horses, help me train them properly. In exchange, you get a place to stay and some distance from whatever you're running from. Tommy looked at his boss like he'd lost his mind. Cole, we don't know anything about her. I know she calmed Diablo, Cole said. And I know she found an injury that $3,000 worth of vet visits didn't catch. That's enough for now. Elena stared at him, her green eyes searching his face for the catch, the angle, the danger. Cole understood that look. It was the look of someone who'd been hurt before and was deciding whether to risk it again. Finally, she wrote, 1 week trial. If it works, we'll discuss longer term. I'll need supplies, medical wraps, anti-inflammatory herbs, better feed for the horses, and privacy. I work better alone. Done, Cole said, extending his hand. Elena hesitated, then shook it. Her grip was firm, her hands rough with calluses. These were working hands, Cole noted. Whatever her story was, she wasn't afraid of hard work. As the morning light grew stronger, Cole watched Elena move from stall to stall, introducing herself to each horse. Some responded immediately, drawn to her calm presence. Others were more skeptical, watching her with wary eyes. But none of them reacted with the outright aggression they typically showed strangers. Tommy pulled Cole aside. Boss, are you sure about this? We don't know where she came from, why she's really here. My gut says it's right, Cole interrupted. And right now, my gut is all I've got left to trust. The bank's breathing down my neck. Tommy, if I can't get these horses trained and sold in the next few months, I'm going to lose everything my family built. If she can help, I have to take that chance. And if she can't? If this is all some kind of con. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Cole watched Alina sign to a skittish Mare named Pepper. Watched the horse's tension ease almost immediately. Then I'm no worse off than I am now. But if she can do what I think she can do, Tommy, we might actually have a fighting chance. The rest of that first day passed in a blur. Cole showed Alina to the foreman's cabin, a small structure about 100 yards from the main house. It had been empty since his last foreman, Jack, had retired and moved to Arizona. The cabin needed some work, a few loose boards, a door that stuck, but it was solid and warm. Alina set down her single backpack, looking around the space with something like relief. Cole realized she probably didn't have much more than what she was carrying. Another piece of the puzzle was this mysterious woman. I'll have Tommy bring over some supplies, Cole wrote on the notepad they'd been passing back and forth. There's a shower, kitchen basics. Make a list of anything else you need. Alina wrote back, thank you. I'll start properly examining all the horses this afternoon. I'll need to document their conditions, their personalities, their traumas. It might take a few days before I can start actually working with them. Take the time you need, Cole replied in writing. But Alina, what exactly are you running from? I need to know if trouble's going to show up at my door. Her hand hesitated over the paper. Then she wrote, my ex-husband. He doesn't accept that it's over. I filed a restraining order 6 months ago. He violated it 3 times. The last time, he found where I was staying, and let's just say I decided it was safer to disappear than to wait for the system to protect me. Cole felt a cold anger settle in his chest. He'd known men like that, men who thought ownership was the same as love. His own mother had left his father for similar reasons when Cole was 17. He'd watched her struggle to rebuild, watched her look over her shoulder for years. He doesn't know you're here. Cole wrote. Alina shook her head. I've been careful. No credit cards, no phone, no digital footprint. I've been moving every few weeks, working odd jobs for cash. This is the longest I've stayed in one place. Then you'll stay here, Cole wrote firmly. And if he shows up, he'll deal with me. Something shifted in Alina's expression, not quite trust, but the first crack in her armor. She nodded slowly, then wrote one more thing. I don't want trouble for you. I'll leave if it comes to that. Let me worry about trouble, Cole wrote back. You just worry about the horses. As the sun climbed higher, Cole returned to his ranch duties while Alina began her systematic evaluation of each horse. He found himself making excuses to pass by the stables, watching from a distance as she worked. She moved with a grace and confidence that seemed at odds with her apparent vulnerability. With each horse, she spent long minutes just observing their stance, their breathing, their eyes. Then she'd begin signing, her hands painting pictures in the air that somehow the animals could read. By late afternoon, she'd filled several pages in a notebook she'd produced from her backpack. When Cole approached, she showed him her findings. Each horse had detailed notes, physical ailments, behavioral issues, probable histories of trauma. It was more thorough than any assessment he'd ever received from a professional trainer. The horse named Copper, a chestnut gelding, had dental problems causing him pain when bridled. The Mare called Duchess had been beaten by a previous owner and flinched at any raised hand. A young colt named Scout had been weaned too early and had never learned proper social behavior with other horses. How can you know all this? Cole wrote. Alina's response was simple. They told me. You just have to know how to listen. As the first stars appeared that evening, Cole stood on his porch watching the lights in the foreman's cabin. He'd taken a gamble today, one that could pay off or blow up spectacularly. But for the first time in months, he felt something he'd almost forgotten. Hope. In the cabin, Elena sat on the edge of the bed, exhausted but unable to sleep. She'd felt it again as soon as the sun set, that pulling sensation, like invisible threads connecting her to every animal on this ranch. Their needs, their pains, their simple desires for food and safety and companionship. It was overwhelming and beautiful and terrifying all at once. She thought about Cole Bennett, about the way he'd chosen to trust her despite every logical reason not to. She thought about the risk she was taking by staying in one place. But most of all, she thought about Diablo, about the rage and pain that masked a deep loneliness. She understood that feeling. Maybe, she thought, this was where she was meant to end up. Maybe this remote Montana ranch, with its struggling rancher and traumatized horses, was exactly where she needed to be. Outside, the November wind picked up, carrying the scent of coming snow. Winter was approaching, and with it, an uncertain future. But for tonight, Elena allowed herself to feel something she hadn't felt in a very long time. Safe. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Tomorrow she would begin the real work of healing these broken animals. Tomorrow she would start proving that her strange gift was real and valuable. But tonight, she was simply grateful for a warm bed, a locked door, and the distant sound, or rather, the distant feeling of horses settling into peaceful sleep. The first week unfolded like a revelation. Cole had expected gradual progress, maybe small improvements over time. What he witnessed instead defied everything he thought he knew about horse training. By the third morning, Elena had Diablo eating grain from her hand, a horse that had previously tried to kick down his stall door whenever anyone approached with food. By the fifth day, she was leading him around the paddock without a lead rope, the massive stallion following her like a devoted dog. Tommy remained skeptical. "It's got to be some kind of trick," he muttered one afternoon, watching from the fence as Elena worked with Duchess, the abused mare. "Maybe she's drugging them or something." "With what?" Cole asked. "I've watched her. She doesn't give them anything except better feed and attention." "Then explain it, boss." "Because what I'm seeing doesn't make sense." Cole couldn't explain it. He'd simply stopped trying. Results were what mattered, and the results were undeniable. Duchess, who'd been unrideable for the 8 months Cole had owned her, now accepted his saddle without panic. Copper's dental issues had been addressed with a vet visit Elena had insisted on, and his temperament had improved dramatically. Even Scout, the poorly socialized colt, was learning boundaries and proper behavior under Elena's patient guidance. But it wasn't just the horses that were changing. Cole found himself changing, too. He'd always been a solitary man, content with his own company and the company of animals. Human relationships felt complicated, messy, prone to disappointment. After his divorce 5 years ago, his ex-wife had grown tired of ranch life and the financial struggles that came with it. Cole had built walls that he thought were permanent. Elena was dismantling them without seeming to try. It started with small things. She'd leave notes for him on the stable office desk, observations about the horses, suggestions for feed adjustments, questions about their histories. Her handwriting was precise, almost artistic. Cole found himself looking forward to these little written conversations, and he started leaving his own notes in return. One morning, he found a note that read, "Diablo's real name should be something gentler. Names carry weight. What if we called him Shadow? He moves like one, and shadows aren't dangerous, just misunderstood." Cole smiled at that. He wrote back, "Shadow it is. You're right, he deserves a fresh start." They began having coffee together in the mornings, sitting on the stable office porch as the sun rose. Elena would bring her notebook, and they'd write back and forth, discussing the day's plans. But increasingly, they'd veer into other topics, Cole's family history with the ranch, Elena's childhood in Oregon, the small moments that make up a life. Cole learned that Elena had a degree in veterinary medicine that she'd never been able to use professionally because most employers weren't willing to accommodate her deafness. She'd worked as a stable hand, a farm laborer, anything involving animals that would take her. Her ex-husband Marcus had seemed charming at first, attentive, protective. But protection had gradually morphed into control, and control into violence. "I stayed too long," she wrote one morning, her pen pressing hard enough to nearly tear the paper. "I kept thinking he'd change, that the man I fell in love with was still in there somewhere. By the time I realized he was never coming back, if he'd ever existed at all, I'd lost 3 years and most of myself." Cole wrote back carefully, "You got out. That takes more courage than staying ever would. And you're rebuilding. I see it every day, in the way you walk a little taller, smile a little easier." Elena had looked at him then, really looked at him, and something passed between them that didn't need words or written notes. Understanding, maybe. Recognition of shared wounds. The morning of the 8th day brought the first real test. A potential buyer named Richard Brennan was coming to look at 3 of Cole's horses, including Shadow. Brennan owned a prestigious equestrian facility in Colorado and had deep pockets. A sale to him could solve months of financial pressure. But Shadow had been the most challenging horse on the ranch, and Cole was nervous about how he'd perform for a stranger. Elena had prepared extensively. She'd worked with Shadow on desensitization exercises, introducing him to various stimuli: flags, loud noises, unexpected movements. The stallion's progress had been remarkable, but Brennan would put him through his paces in ways Elena couldn't fully predict. What if he reverts? Cole wrote that morning, anxiety tightening his chest. What if Brennan approaches him the wrong way and Shadow goes back to his old behavior? Elena wrote back, "Then we deal with it. But trust him, Cole. Trust the work we've done. Shadow knows he's safe here now. That doesn't disappear because a stranger shows up." Brennan arrived at 10 o'clock sharp, driving a luxury SUV that looked out of place against the ranch's weathered buildings. He was in his late 50s, silver-haired, and impeccably dressed even for a stable visit. His handshake was firm, his smile professional and slightly condescending. "Bennett," he said, looking around the property with an appraiser's eye. "I'll be honest, I wasn't sure this trip would be worth my time. Your reputation with problem horses precedes you." Cole felt his jaw tighten but kept his voice level. "My horses are solid. You'll see that." Brennan's gaze landed on Elena, who stood near the stable entrance. "And who's this?" "Elena Rosewood. She's my horse specialist." Brennan's eyebrows rose. "Specialist in what, exactly?" "Communication and behavioral rehabilitation," Cole said, using the formal title they'd come up with together. "I see." Brennan's tone suggested he didn't see it all, or didn't think much of what he saw. "Well, let's get to it. I'm particularly interested in that black stallion you mentioned on the phone. What was his registered name again?" "We call him Shadow now," Cole said. "And I should warn you, he's got a history of aggression." "But Elena's been working with him, Mr. Bennett." Brennan interrupted. "I've been evaluating horses for 30 years. I think I can handle a temperamental stallion." Elena had been watching the exchange carefully, reading lips and body language. She pulled out her notepad and wrote something, showing it to Cole. "Let me bring him out." "Trust me." Cole hesitated, then nodded. Brennan looked puzzled as Elena walked into the stable without a word. "She doesn't speak?" Brennan asked. "She's deaf," Cole explained. "But that doesn't affect her work. In fact, it enhances it." Brennan looked dubious but said nothing as Elena emerged leading Shadow. The stallion was magnificent in the morning light, his black coat gleaming, muscles rippling beneath sleek skin. But more impressive than his appearance was his demeanor. He walked calmly beside Elena, his ears forward, his eyes alert but not aggressive. Brennan circled the horse slowly, his professional mask slipping to reveal genuine interest. "He's stunning." "How old?" "7, Cole said. "Prime age. Strong bloodline, excellent conformation. And the aggression you mentioned?" As if on cue, Tommy walked around the corner of the stable carrying a wheelbarrow. Shadow's head came up sharply, his body tensing. Tommy froze, remembering past encounters with the stallion. The air seemed to crackle with potential violence. Then Elena's hands moved. She signed something fluid and graceful, her movements somehow conveying calm authority. Shadow's attention shifted to her immediately. His muscles relaxed. His ears swiveled back to their normal position. In seconds, the crisis had passed. Brennan stared. What did she just do? Her job, Cole said simply. Shadow had trauma in his past. Elena helps him work through it. You won't find a horse with more potential. And now he's got the temperament to match his ability. For the next hour, Brennan put Shadow through every test he could think of. Lead changes, obstacles, response to various commands. Elena stayed nearby, occasionally signing encouragement or gentle corrections. Shadow performed flawlessly, showing both his natural athleticism and his newfound trust in human handlers. By the time they moved on to the other 2 horses, Copper and a young mare named Willow, Brennan's skepticism had transformed into enthusiasm. Cole could practically see the man calculating numbers in his head. When the evaluation concluded, Brennan pulled Cole aside. "I'll be direct, Bennett. I came here expecting to make a lowball offer on maybe one of these horses, thinking I'd be doing you a favor. But what I've seen today changes things. That stallion alone is worth 3 times what you quoted me on the phone. And I want all 3. Cole's heart hammered. 3 sales would give him breathing room with the bank, time to build on the momentum Elena had created. "What are you offering?" Brennan named a figure that made Cole's breath catch. It wasn't a fortune, but it was fair more than fair. It was hope translated into dollars. "There's one condition," Brennan added. "I want your specialist, Elena. I'll double whatever you're paying her, plus benefits, housing at my facility. Someone with her abilities could revolutionize my operation." Cole felt like he'd been punched. Of course Brennan would want Elena. Anyone who'd seen what she could do would want her. And Cole couldn't compete with what Brennan could offer: security, prestige, resources beyond anything a struggling Montana ranch could provide. "I'll have to discuss it with her," Cole managed to say. "The decision is hers." "Of course," Brennan said, handing over a business card. "But think about it, Bennett. Someone with her talent is wasted out here. I could give her opportunities, exposure. She could write her own ticket in the equine world." After Brennan left, Cole found Elena in Willow's stall, brushing the mare's mane with long, soothing strokes. He stood at the stall door for a moment, watching her work, trying to imagine the ranch without her. The thought left him hollow. Elena sensed his presence and turned. She could read the conflict on his face immediately. Her eyebrows raised in question. Cole pulled out his phone and typed, "He wants to buy all 3 horses. Good price. But there's something else." He showed her Brennan's offer, watching her expression as she read. Surprise, consideration, then something harder to identify. She took the phone and typed back, "What do you think I should do?" It was the question Cole had been dreading. The right answer, the selfless answer, was obvious. "I think you should consider it seriously. It's a good opportunity. Better than what I can offer." Elena studied his face for a long moment. Then she typed, "That's not what I asked. I asked what you think, not what's logical or practical. What do you want?" Cole took the phone back, his fingers hovering over the screen. He could type the safe answer, the professional answer. Or he could be honest. "I want you to stay," he typed. "Not because of the horses or the ranch. Because in 2 weeks you've become someone I look forward to seeing every morning. Because your notes make me smile. Because you understand what it's like to carry wounds you don't talk about. Because I haven't felt this comfortable with another person in longer than I can remember. He handed the phone back, his heart pounding. Elena read his words twice, then looked up at him with those striking green eyes. She typed for several minutes, her expression focused. I ran for 6 months, she wrote. Different towns, different jobs, always looking over my shoulder. I never stayed long enough to matter to anyone or have anyone matter to me. It was safer that way. Lonelier, but safer. Then I found this place, found you, found these horses who needed me as much as I needed them. And for the first time since I left Marcus, I felt like maybe I could stop running. Maybe I could build something instead of just surviving. She paused, then continued typing. Brennan's offer is tempting. But it's just another job, another place where I'd be alone in a different way. Here, I'm part of something. Here, someone sees me, not just my gift, but me. That's worth more than any salary. Cole felt something tight in his chest loosen. So you'll stay? Elena smiled. A real smile that reached her eyes. She typed one more thing, I'll stay. But you're giving me a raise. Despite the tension of the moment, Cole laughed out loud. Elena couldn't hear it, but she could see the joy in his face. And her smile widened. They spent the rest of the afternoon finalizing the sale with Brennan via email, arranging transport for the 3 horses. The money would arrive within the week. Cole could pay down the bank debt, order supplies, maybe even fix the irrigation system that had been limping along for 2 years. That evening, as the sun set in brilliant oranges and purples across the Montana sky, Cole and Elena sat on the stable office porch with mugs of coffee. The notepad lay between them, but they weren't writing. Sometimes Cole was learning. Presence was its own language. Tommy joined them, carrying a 6-pack of beer. Heard about the sale, he said, handing beers to Cole and offering one to Elena, who shook her head. That's good news, boss. Real good news. It's a start, Cole agreed. Elena's the one who made it possible. Tommy nodded slowly. Look, I owe you an apology, he said, looking at Elena. I've been skeptical, maybe even hostile. But what you did today with Shadow, with all of them, I've never seen anything like it. You're the real deal. Elena picked up the notepad and wrote, No apology needed. Skepticism is healthy. But thank you for saying so. As Tommy headed back to his own quarters, Cole found himself thinking about the strange turn his life had taken. 3 weeks ago, he'd been alone, struggling, watching everything his family had built slowly crumble. Now he had a partner, not just in work, but in the deeper sense of having someone who understood the weight he carried. Can I ask you something? Cole wrote in the notepad. Elena nodded. When you're with the horses, when you're doing what you do, what's it like? What do you feel? Elena took a long time to answer, her pen moving slowly across the paper. Imagine every emotion you've ever felt, but amplified and stripped of words. Pure feeling. Fear tastes like metal. Pain feels like static electricity. Joy is warm sunlight. When I'm with them, I'm not deaf. I'm not limited. I'm connected to something ancient and true. Every animal is a story written in sensations and needs and simple, honest desires. Humans complicate everything with language, with lies we tell ourselves and each other. Animals just are. Being with them is the closest thing to peace I've ever known. Cole read her words twice, understanding in that moment why she'd risked so much to stay here. It wasn't just about the horses or the ranch or even about him. It was about finding a place where her difference wasn't a disability, but a gift, where she could be wholly herself. Thank you, he wrote back, for trusting me with that. And for staying. Elena reached across the space between them and squeezed his hand briefly. It was a simple gesture, over in seconds, but Cole felt its impact long after she'd returned to her cabin for the night. Inside his ranch house, Cole sat at his grandfather's old desk and opened the ledger where he tracked the ranch's finances. For the first time in 2 years, he wrote numbers in black ink instead of red. Brennan's payment would arrive in days. The bank would get its due. The ranch would survive another season. But more than that, much more than that, Cole felt something stirring that had been dormant so long he'd almost forgotten it existed. Hope, yes. But also connection. The possibility of building something with someone else. Of not carrying the burden alone. In her cabin, Elena lay in bed watching shadows play across the ceiling. She thought about Marcus, about whether he was still looking for her, about the fear that lived in the back of her mind like a constant low hum. Then she thought about Cole's honest face, about Shadow's transformation, about Tommy's grudging respect, for the first time in 6 months. The fear felt smaller than the hope. She didn't know what the future held. She didn't know if the peace she'd found here would last. But tonight, in this moment, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she'd finally found a place to call home. Outside, the Montana night settled deep and cold. The horses slept in their stables, calm and content. And 2 people who'd both been running in their own ways began, tentatively, to stand still. The real test, though, was still to come. Because 300 miles away, in a dingy motel room in Idaho Falls, Marcus Gaines was finally getting somewhere. He'd been tracking his ex-wife methodically, following the sparse trails she'd left behind. Cash transactions, brief stays, always moving. But Marcus was patient. And patient men eventually got what they wanted. He'd just gotten a tip from a bartender in Whitefish, Montana. A woman matching Elena's description, deaf, kept to herself, had been asking about work with animals. The bartender remembered because his sister worked at the motel, and the woman had paid cash for a week up front. Marcus looked at the map spread across his bed, placing a red pin in Whitefish. He smiled. He was getting close. Winter arrived in earnest during the 3rd week of Elena's stay. Snow blanketed the Montana landscape in thick, pristine white, transforming the ranch into something from a postcard. The cold was brutal, temperatures dropping well below zero most nights, but the stable stayed warm, and the work continued. Cole had never seen horses thrive like this. Even the ones who'd been well adjusted before Elena's arrival seemed more content, more engaged. She'd established routines with each of them, personalized approaches that addressed their individual needs and personalities. The ranch was developing a reputation, too. Word of Brennan's purchase had spread through the equestrian community, and Cole was fielding inquiries from potential buyers and people wanting to send their problem horses for rehabilitation. "We're going to need to expand," Tommy said one afternoon, reviewing the messages Cole had received. "Maybe hire another hand. Build out the south paddock." "One step at a time," Cole cautioned, but he couldn't hide his satisfaction. The ranch that had been dying 3 weeks ago was now showing signs of real life. Elena's days settled into a rhythm. Mornings with Shadow, who had become her special project. The stallion followed her everywhere now, and she'd started riding him, first just walking around the paddock, then venturing out onto the trails that wound through Cole's property. Afternoons were spent with the other horses, documenting their progress, working through their behavioral issues with infinite patience. Evenings were for Cole. They'd started having dinner together, alternating between the main house and Elena's cabin. Cole had discovered that Elena was an excellent cook, able to create remarkable meals from simple ingredients. She'd taught him some basic sign language too, not full conversations yet, but enough that they could communicate simple things without always reaching for the notepad. "Coffee?" He'd sign in the morning, and she'd nod, smiling. "Thank you," she'd sign after he'd helped her carry supplies to the stable. It was a new language between them, built on gestures and growing trust. One evening in late November, A storm rolled in with unusual ferocity. Wind howled across the open grassland, driving snow sideways. Cole had secured the animals early, double-checking every latch and door. The horses were restless, they always were during storms, but safe. Around 9 o'clock, Cole's power flickered and died. Not unusual during winter storms, but always inconvenient. He grabbed his emergency lantern and was about to check the generator when he saw Elena's flashlight bobbing through the snow from her cabin toward the stables. He pulled on his heavy coat and followed, finding her in the stable aisle. She was moving from stall to stall, checking each horse. Her flashlight beam caught her face, and Cole saw the tension there. He touched her shoulder gently to get her attention, signing, "Problem?" Elena pulled out her phone. They'd discovered that typing on phones was faster than passing. Notepads in the dark and wrote, "They're afraid. The storm is intense. I can feel their anxiety like electricity in the air. Shadow, especially storms, trigger something in him. A bad memory." Cole nodded, understanding. He'd noticed Shadow's unusual agitation earlier. The stallion was pacing his stall, his eyes showing white around the edges. "What do you need?" Cole typed. "I'm going to stay with him," Elena wrote back. "Sometimes physical presence is the only thing that helps. You should go back to the house, no point in both of us freezing." "I'll stay," Cole typed. "Two of us can keep more of them calm." Elena looked at him for a moment, then nodded. They spent the next hour moving through the stable together, Elena signing to the horses while Cole spoke in low, soothing tones. The animals responded to both of them, their fear gradually easing despite the storm's fury outside. Eventually, they ended up in Shadow's stall. The stallion was still tense but had stopped pacing. Elena sat in the corner on a hay bale, and Shadow immediately moved to stand beside her, his massive head lowering to rest near her shoulder. Cole sat opposite them, marveling at the sight. "Tell me about him," Cole typed. "What happened to make storms so frightening?" Elena's fingers moved across her phone screen. "He was in a barn fire. 2 years ago, before you bought him. Lightning strike during the storm. 3 horses died. Shadow survived, but he was trapped in his stall for hours, surrounded by smoke and flames and the screams of dying animals. The previous owner never disclosed this, probably why you got him for the price you did. Every storm brings it all back. The smell of smoke, the feeling of helplessness. How do you know all this?" Cole typed. "I know you say he tells you, but how exactly does that work?" Elena considered for a long moment before responding. "When I'm with an animal, especially one in distress, I receive impressions. Images, sensations, emotions. It's not like watching a movie, it's more like experiencing fragments of memory that aren't mine. With Shadow, when I first touched him, I felt intense heat, choking smoke, terror so complete it was paralyzing. The memories are embedded in his body, in the way he holds tension, in his reactions to specific triggers." "That must be overwhelming," Cole wrote. "Carrying their traumas like that." "It is," Elena admitted in her text. "Sometimes I finish a day and I'm exhausted in ways that have nothing to do with physical work. But it's also a privilege. They trust me with their worst moments, and I can help them understand that those moments are over, that they're safe now." A particularly strong gust of wind shook the stable, and Shadow snorted nervously. Elena stood, her hands beginning the fluid signs that Cole had come to recognize as her way of speaking to the horses. Shadow's eyes fixed on her movements, and gradually, his breathing slowed. Cole watched this woman, this remarkable, mysterious woman calm, a traumatized animal with nothing but gestures and presence, and he felt something shift in his chest. It wasn't just admiration anymore, or gratitude for what she'd done for his ranch. It was something deeper, more dangerous, more real. The storm raged until nearly midnight, before finally exhausting itself. When the wind died down to a whisper and the snow stopped falling, Cole and Elena made their way back through the drifts to their respective homes. At the fork in the path, one way leading to the main house, the other to Elena's cabin, they paused. Cole pulled out his phone. "Thank you for tonight. For caring about them the way you do." Elena read it and typed back, "They deserve to be cared for." "We all do." Their eyes met in the moonlight, reflecting off fresh snow. Cole wanted to say more, to cross the distance between them, to risk being vulnerable in ways he'd avoided for years. But Elena's past was still too close, her wounds still too fresh. So he just nodded and signed, "Good night." "Good night," she signed back. Then turned toward her cabin. Cole watched her go, then headed to his own empty house, wondering when exactly he'd stop thinking of her as just an employee. The next morning brought clear skies and brutal cold. Cole was up before dawn, starting the tractor to clear the main drive. Tommy arrived around 7, and together they worked on digging out the paddock gates and ensuring the water lines hadn't frozen. Elena emerged from her cabin around 8, bundled in layers against the cold. She waved to Cole, then headed to the stables to begin her morning routine. Everything seemed normal, peaceful even. In that crystalline winter way, Cole didn't see the car parked on the access road a quarter-mile from his property. Didn't notice the man watching through binoculars, cataloging the layout of the ranch, noting the location of the cabins and stables. Didn't sense the danger that had finally found the place they'd both begun to think of as safe. Marcus Gaines had arrived in Whitefish 2 days earlier. He'd watched Elena from a distance, confirming it was her before making his move. He'd seen her with the horses, seen her with the rancher, seen how comfortable she looked, how settled. It made his blood boil. She'd run from him, made him look like a fool, and now she was playing house with some cowboy on a nowhere ranch. But Marcus was careful. He'd learned from his mistakes before, the restraining order violations that had gotten him arrested, the pattern of behavior that had made the cops take Elena's side. This time, he'd be smart about it. He'd wait for the right moment, the right opportunity. And then he'd remind Elena exactly who she belonged to. Inside the ranch, oblivious to the watching eyes, life continued. Cole received a call from a trainer in Wyoming, wanting to send 2 horses for Elena's rehabilitation program. The money was good, the timing perfect. He found Elena in the tack room, cleaning saddles. He knocked on the doorframe to get her attention, then showed her his phone with the details of the offer. Elena read it and smiled, typing, "We're actually doing this. Building something real." "Thanks to you," Cole typed back. "I've been thinking we should make this official. I want you as a partner, not just an employee. Equal share in the training operation. You've earned it." Elena's eyes widened. She started to type something, then stopped, then started again. "Cole, that's incredibly generous, but you don't have to do that. I'm happy with our current arrangement." "I'm not doing it to be generous," Cole wrote. "I'm doing it because it's right. This success is as much yours as mine. More yours, honestly. Say yes." Elena stared at the screen for a long moment, then looked up at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Finally she typed, "Yes, but on one condition: you teach me more sign language. If we're partners, we should be able to communicate properly." "Deal," Cole typed, smiling. They shook hands, but this time neither let go immediately. The handshake lingered, becoming something else, a connection that went beyond business, beyond friendship even. Cole felt it, and he could see in Elena's eyes that she felt it too. The moment was interrupted by Tommy bursting into the tack room. "Boss, we got a problem. Some guy just pulled up to the gate, says he's looking for his wife. Matches Elena's description perfectly." Elena's face went white. The phone nearly slipped from her hands. She typed frantically, "Marcus, he found me. I need to leave now, before he sees me." "Too late," Tommy said grimly. "He's already walking up the drive. Said he knows she's here, and he's not leaving without her." Cole felt cold fury wash over him. He'd known this moment might come, but knowing it and facing it were two different things. He turned to Elena, speaking slowly so she could read his lips while he typed. You don't have to face him. You don't have to do anything you don't want to do. But if you want him gone, I'll make it happen. Elena's hands were shaking, but she typed. He won't just leave. He never just leaves. He'll escalate, make threats, maybe get violent. I don't want you or Tommy getting hurt because of me. Let me worry about that, Cole typed. You stay here. Lock the door. Tommy and I will handle this. Before Elena could respond, Cole was moving, Tommy right behind him. They emerged from the stable to find a man standing in the ranch yard. Marcus Gaines was shorter than Cole expected, maybe 5'10", with the build of someone who spent more time in gyms than doing actual work. He wore expensive outdoor gear that looked brand new, and his expression was a calculated mix of concern and determination. Can I help you? Cole called out, keeping his voice neutral. I'm looking for my wife, Marcus said. Elena Gaines. I know she's here. I've been tracking her movements, and this is the last place she was seen. Don't know anyone by that name, Cole said flatly. Marcus smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Come on now, let's not play games. I saw her this morning through my binoculars. Dark hair, about 5'6", deaf. She's been working with your horses. I just want to talk to her, make sure she's okay. Even if I did know who you're talking about, Cole said. And I'm not saying I do if someone doesn't want to talk to you. That's their choice. She's my wife, Marcus said, his voice hardening. I have a right. You have no rights here, Tommy interrupted, stepping forward. This is private property. And from what I hear, you've got a restraining order that says you need to stay away from her. Marcus's mask slipped for a moment, showing the anger beneath. That's a misunderstanding. She was confused, scared. I just want to apologize, to bring her home where she belongs. She is home, Cole said quietly. And you're trespassing. Leave now, or I call the sheriff. You think you're protecting her? Marcus laughed bitterly. She's not what she seems. She's unstable, irrational. She needs help, and I'm the only one who can give it to her. That's not how I see it, Cole said. I see someone who rebuilt her life after getting away from you. Someone who's found peace and purpose. Someone who doesn't need you anywhere near her. Marcus's expression turned ugly. You sleeping with my wife, cowboy? What this is about? Last warning, Cole said, pulling out his phone. Leave now. For a moment, Marcus looked like he might charge at them. His hands clenched into fists, his jaw working. But then he seemed to regain control. He smiled again, that cold, calculated smile. Fine, I'll go. But this isn't over. Elena is my wife, legally and in every way that matters. And I always get what's mine, always. He turned and walked back toward his car, a rental sedan that had seen better days. But before he got in, he called back, Tell her I'll be waiting. When she's ready to stop this foolishness, I'll be there. I'm a patient man. They watched him drive away, but Cole's relief was short-lived. Men like Marcus didn't give up because of one confrontation. They regrouped, planned, waited for weakness. Cole found Elena in the tack room, sitting on the floor with her knees pulled to her chest. She looked small, frightened, nothing like the confident woman who commanded respect from half-ton animals. He sat down beside her, not touching, just present. She pulled out her phone with shaking hands. I should leave. I've put you in danger. He won't stop. He'll come back, maybe with weapons, maybe with lawyers. He has money, connections. He always finds a way to win. Not this time, Cole typed firmly. We're calling the sheriff, documenting this violation of the restraining order. And you're not going anywhere. You're part of this ranch now, Elena. Part of my life. And I don't abandon people I care about. Elena read his words, tears streaming down her face. She signed something Cole recognized, "Thank you," and "afraid." He responded with the signs she'd taught him, "Safe here. I promise." But even as he made that promise, Cole wondered if he could keep it. Because the look in Marcus Gaines's eyes had been the look of a man who would do anything to reclaim what he thought belonged to him. Cole had just made himself an obstacle in Marcus's path. That night, Sheriff Tom Crawford came to the ranch, took statements, and documented the restraining order violation. He was a good man, someone Cole had known since high school, but even he looked concerned. "I can have deputies patrol more regularly," Crawford said. "But Bennett, you need to understand men like this are unpredictable. He might back off, or he might double down. Keep your doors locked. Maybe get some security cameras installed." After the sheriff left, Cole found himself standing on his porch, staring out at the dark landscape. Elena's cabin light was on, and he could see her shadow moving past the window. He thought about going over there, making sure she was okay. But he also understood that sometimes people needed space to process their fear alone. In her cabin, Elena sat at the small kitchen table. Her phone opened to a conversation with an old friend from Oregon, one of the few people she still trusted. She typed out what had happened, received supportive messages back, but none of it really helped. She'd been found. Her sanctuary had been compromised. And worst of all, she'd brought danger to Cole's door. She thought about Shadow, about how the stallion had learned to trust again despite his trauma, about how patient Cole had been with both of them, about how, for the first time since leaving Marcus, she'd felt like maybe she could have a future that wasn't defined by fear, but Marcus had a way of poisoning everything he touched. Even from a distance, even after she'd escaped, he was still controlling her life, still making her run, still stealing her peace. Not this time, she thought. Not anymore. If Marcus wanted a confrontation, maybe it was time to finally give him one on her terms, in a place where she had allies, where she had purpose. She was done running. Whatever happened next, she would face it here, with Cole and the horses and the life she was building. Outside, the temperature continued to drop. Another storm was forecast for later in the week. And somewhere in Whitefish, Marcus Gaines sat in his motel room, planning his next move, confident that eventually, Elena would crack. She always did. But what Marcus didn't understand, what he'd never understood, was that the woman he'd married didn't exist anymore. Elena had been transformed by suffering and survival into someone stronger. Someone who'd finally found something worth fighting for, and people who have nothing left to lose are the most dangerous opponents of all. The days following Marcus's appearance settled into an uneasy tension. Sheriff Crawford increased patrols around the ranch, and Cole installed motion sensor lights around the property. Tommy started carrying his grandfather's revolver in a holster on his belt, something Cole had never seen him do before. Elena threw herself into work with an intensity that bordered on obsession. She was up before dawn and worked until well after dark, as if staying busy could keep the fear at bay. Cole watched her carefully, recognizing the signs of someone running on adrenaline and stubbornness alone. The two horses from Wyoming arrived on a Tuesday morning. Both were rescues from a hoarding situation, malnourished, mistrustful, bearing the psychological scars of neglect. Elena named them Grace and Mercy, and within days, she'd established enough trust that they'd eat from her hand. "She's going to burn out," Tommy observed one afternoon, watching Elena work with Grace in the round pen. "She hasn't taken a day off since that guy showed up." "I know," Cole said. "But she needs to process this in her own way. We just need to be here when she's ready to talk about it." What Cole didn't mention was that he'd been doing his own research. He'd contacted a lawyer friend in Billings, learned about protective orders and stalking laws, built a case file documenting Marcus's behavior. He'd also reached out to Brennan, who'd connected him with a private security consultant. Cole couldn't afford full-time security, But he could afford advice and some basic precautions. The ranch was becoming a fortress. Quietly and methodically, on Thursday evening, Cole invited Elena to dinner at the main house. She almost declined. He could see the hesitation in her face, but finally agreed. He'd made his mother's pot roast recipe, something that filled the kitchen with warmth and the smell of home. They ate in comfortable silence for a while, communicating through glances and small signs. Then Elena pulled out her phone and typed, "I've been thinking about leaving again. Not because I want to, but because I'm putting everyone here at risk." Cole had been expecting this. He typed back, "Marcus is putting everyone at risk. Not you. There's a difference. But if I weren't here, if you weren't here, he'd follow you somewhere else. Somewhere you'd be alone, vulnerable, without people who care about your safety. At least here, you have backup." Elena set down her fork, her eyes searching his face. She typed, "Why are you doing this? You barely know me. My problems aren't your responsibility." Cole considered his response carefully before typing, "3 weeks ago, I was drowning. The ranch was failing, I was alone, and I'd convinced myself that was how it had to be. Then you showed up and everything changed. Not just the horses or the business me. You reminded me what it feels like to connect with someone, to care about something beyond just surviving another day. So when you ask why I'm doing this, the answer is simple: because you matter. Because what we're building here matters. And because sometimes the right thing to do is also the thing your heart tells you to do." Elena read his words 3 times. When she looked up, her eyes were wet. She typed, "I haven't let anyone close in so long. It's terrifying." "I know," Cole typed. "Trust me, I know. But maybe we can be terrified together." She smiled at that, a small, genuine smile that made Cole's chest tight. They finished dinner, and afterward, they sat on the couch going through old photo albums of the ranch. Cole showed her pictures of his grandfather, the original Bennett who'd homesteaded this land. His grandmother, who'd raised 6 children while running the ranch during the war. His parents, young and hopeful before time and hardship wore them down. "Family is complicated," Cole typed. "But this land, this life, it's in my blood. I can't imagine being anywhere else." Elena typed back, "I never had that. My parents loved me, but they didn't understand me. Being deaf made me different, isolated. I spent my childhood feeling like I was on the outside looking in. The only place I ever felt like I belonged was with animals. They didn't care that I couldn't hear them. They just cared that I understood." "You belong here now," Cole typed. "With Shadow and Grace and Mercy. With me and Tommy and everyone else who's grateful you walked into our lives." Elena reached out and took his hand, squeezing it briefly before letting go. It was a small gesture, but it carried weight. Permission, maybe, to keep moving forward. Hope that despite the danger circling them, something good might still be possible. The moment shattered when Cole's security system alert went off. Motion detected near the south paddock. Cole was on his feet instantly, grabbing the shotgun he'd started keeping by the door. Elena's face went pale, fear flashing across her features. "Stay here," Cole signed. But Elena was already shaking her head, pulling on her coat. They moved through the darkness together. Cole's flashlight cutting through the night. Tommy emerged from his quarters, gun drawn. The 3 of them approached the south paddock cautiously, ready for confrontation. What they found instead was a deer, caught in the fence wire, thrashing in panic. No Marcus, no threat. Just an animal that needed help. Cole lowered his shotgun while Elena immediately moved toward the deer, her hands already signing calming gestures. The deer's eyes rolled white, its breathing rapid and shallow. One leg was badly tangled, the wire cutting into flesh. "We need wire cutters," Tommy said. "I'll get them." While Tommy ran back to the shed, Elena knelt near the deer's head, signing continuously. The animal's panic seemed to ease slightly. its thrashing becoming less violent. Cole watched in amazement as she laid her hand on the deer's neck, and the creature actually stilled, its dark eyes fixed on her face. "How do you do that?" Cole asked, knowing she couldn't hear him but needing to say it anyway. Tommy returned with the cutters, and together, the three of them carefully freed the deer's leg. The wound wasn't deep, but it would need cleaning. Elena signed something, and impossibly, the deer remained calm while she examined the injury. "We should call a wildlife vet," Tommy suggested, but Elena was already shaking her head. She typed on her phone. The stress of waiting would be worse. "I can treat this." "Cole, bring the first aid kit from the stable." "Tommy, I need clean water and towels." For the next hour, they worked as a team. Elena cleaned and dressed the deer's wound with a gentleness that seemed to transcend species. The deer never once tried to flee, trusting this strange human who spoke in gestures and radiated calm. When the treatment was complete, Elena signed something final to the deer, then stepped back. The animal stood slowly, tested its weight on the injured leg, then looked directly at Elena as if in gratitude before bounding off into the darkness. That was ... Tommy started, then trailed off, unable to find words. "That was Elena," Cole said simply, back at the house. As Elena cleaned her hands in the kitchen sink, Cole found himself watching her with new understanding. This gift she had, it wasn't just about training horses or making money. It was about connection at the most fundamental level, about bridging the gap between species through empathy and intuition. "You're remarkable," Cole typed when she turned around. "I hope you know that." Elena looked embarrassed, drying her hands on a towel. She typed, "I just did what anyone would do." "No," Cole typed firmly. "What you did tonight, what you do every day, it's extraordinary. And I think it's time we stop treating it as just a job skill. This is who you are. Your purpose." Elena stared at the screen for a long moment, then typed, "Marcus used to say my gift was just me being weird, trying to compensate for being broken. He made me feel ashamed of it." "Marcus is an idiot," Cole typed. "And you're not broken. You're differently abled in a way that gives you access to something most people never experience. That's not a deficit, it's a superpower." For the first time since Marcus had appeared at the ranch, Elena laughed a silent laugh that lit up her whole face. She typed, "A superpower? That's a bit much." "Disagree," Cole typed with a smile. "I've seen you do things that defy explanation. If that's not a superpower, I don't know what is." The moment of levity was exactly what they both needed. The tension of the past week eased slightly, replaced by something warmer. They sat on the couch again, this time closer than before. And Elena taught Cole more sign language. "Happy," she signed. Her hands moving in a circular motion over her heart. Cole repeated it clumsily. And Elena gently corrected his hand position. Her touch was soft, careful. And Cole found himself acutely aware of how close they were sitting. "Better," she signed with approval. "Teach me something else," Cole signed back. Elena thought for a moment, then signed something more complex. Cole watched carefully, then asked her to show him again. She did, slower this time, and he realized she was signing, "You make me feel safe." Cole's breath caught. He signed back the phrase she'd taught him for thank you, then reached for his phone to type something more. "You make me feel alive again. I didn't even realize I'd been just going through the motions until you showed me what it feels like to actually live." They sat there, inches apart, the air between them charged with possibilities. Cole knew he should be careful, should remember that Elena was still healing from trauma, still vulnerable. But when she leaned forward slightly, when her eyes dropped to his lips, he couldn't help but close the distance. The kiss was gentle, tentative, a question as much as an answer. Elena's hand came up to cup his face, and Cole felt something click into place. Like a puzzle piece he hadn't known was missing. When they pulled apart, Elena was smiling, truly smiling in a way Cole hadn't seen before. She signed, "I've wanted to do that for days." Cole laughed, the sound startling in the quiet house. He signed back, "Me too." They kissed again, longer this time, deeper. Years of loneliness and pain seemed to melt away in that moment, replaced by connection and hope and the simple joy of being with someone who understood. When they finally broke apart, Elena typed, "This is probably a terrible idea. My life is a mess. There's a dangerous man looking for me, and I have enough baggage to fill a freight train." "My life isn't exactly stable either," Cole typed back. "The ranch is barely profitable. I have trust issues from my divorce, and I've been alone so long I've forgotten how to let someone in. We're both disasters. So what do we do?" Elena typed. "We try anyway," Cole typed. "We take it one day at a time. We figure it out together. And we don't let Marcus or fear or anything else steal this from us." Elena nodded slowly, then typed, "Okay, together." It was after midnight when Elena finally returned to her cabin. Cole walked her there, both of them hyper-aware of every shadow, every sound. The motion lights blazed on as they approached, and Cole waited until she was safely inside before heading back to the main house. He felt lighter than he had in years, despite the circumstances. Whatever happened with Marcus, whatever challenges lay ahead, he wouldn't face them alone anymore. Neither would Elena, but what neither of them knew was that Marcus had been watching from the tree line during the entire deer rescue. He'd seen them working together, seen the easy coordination, the trust. And later, from a different vantage point, he'd seen them kiss through the ranch house window, sitting in his car on a service road miles from the ranch. Marcus punched the steering wheel hard enough to hurt his hand. Elena was supposed to be suffering, supposed to be lost without him, supposed to realize she'd made a mistake leaving. Instead, she was thriving, happy, with someone else. The rage that had been simmering since he'd arrived in Whitefish boiled over into something darker, more dangerous. If he couldn't have Elena, if she insisted on choosing this rancher over the man she'd promised to love forever, then maybe it was time to remind her that promises had consequences. Marcus pulled out his phone and made a call. The voice that answered was rough, professional, asking no questions about why someone needed the services Marcus was requesting. "I need a message delivered," Marcus said. "Something that will make an impact without crossing too many legal lines. Can you handle that?" "Depends on the message," the voice replied. Marcus smiled in the darkness. "I'll send you the details. But basically, I need someone to understand they've taken something that doesn't belong to them. I need them to reconsider their choices. Gonna cost you." "Money isn't a problem," Marcus said. "I just need it done right. Scary enough to work, but clean enough that I can't be directly connected." "When?" "Soon," Marcus said. "Within the next few days. I'm tired of waiting." After the call ended, Marcus sat in the dark, imagining Elena's face when she realized he was serious. When she understood that running from him had been the biggest mistake of her life. When she came crawling back, begging for forgiveness, because that's what would happen. It always did. He just needed to apply the right pressure to the right points. And if the rancher got hurt in the process, well, that was just collateral damage. Marcus started the car and drove back toward Whitefish, already planning the next steps. He was a patient man, but his patience had limits. And those limits had just been reached. Back at the ranch, Cole lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying the evening in his mind. The kiss, the connection, the sense that despite everything, life was offering him a second chance at happiness. He thought about Elena in her cabin, hoped she was sleeping peacefully, hoped she felt as hopeful as he did in her cabin. Elena did sleep deeply for the first time since Marcus had appeared. In her dreams, she rode shadow across open fields under endless sky. And Cole rode beside her, and there was no fear, no past, no Marcus. Just freedom and possibility, and the simple joy of being alive. Neither of them heard the soft crunch of tires on gravel as an unfamiliar vehicle slowly cruised past the ranch entrance around 3 in the morning. Its occupant taking careful note of the layout, the security measures, the weaknesses in the property's defenses. The countdown to confrontation had begun, and none of them knew it yet. But in the cold pre-dawn hours of that December morning, fate was drawing all the players together for a final, inevitable collision. And when it came, everything would change. 3 days of fragile peace followed. Cole and Elena navigated their new relationship carefully, stealing moments between work, a touch on the shoulder, a lingering glance, hands finding each other when they thought Tommy wasn't looking. The horses continued to thrive, and 2 more inquiries came in from potential clients. Life felt almost normal, if you ignored the sheriff's patrols and the loaded shotgun by Cole's door. Friday evening arrived with crystal-clear skies and temperatures hovering just above 0. Tommy had driven into town for supplies and to visit his girlfriend, leaving Cole and Elena alone on the ranch. They'd made dinner together in the main house, moving around the kitchen with comfortable synchronicity, communicating through signs and smiles. After eating, they settled on the couch with coffee, Elena's head resting on Cole's shoulder. She'd been teaching him more sign language, and he was getting better at it, able to hold simple conversations without reaching for his phone. "Tomorrow," Elena signed. "I want to try riding Shadow beyond the property." "He's ready, you're sure?" Cole signed back, his movements still a bit clumsy. Elena nodded, signing, "Trust him." "Trust me." "I do," Cole signed, then added verbally what he couldn't yet sign. "I trust you with everything." Elena couldn't hear the words, but she could read his expression. She lifted her head and kissed him softly, and Cole thought that maybe, just maybe, they'd make it through this storm intact. That's when the lights went out. Complete darkness swallowed the house. Cole's first thought was another winter storm, but the sky had been clear. His second thought sent ice through his veins. Sabotage. He stood quickly, pulling Elena up with him. Even in the darkness, he could feel her tension, the fear radiating off her. Cole grabbed his phone, using its flashlight to navigate to the shotgun by the door. His hands were steady despite the adrenaline flooding his system. Elena pulled out her own phone and typed, "Marcus?" Cole nodded grimly. He typed back, "Stay behind me. We're going to the stable. It has its own generator. We'll be safer there." They moved through the house toward the back door, but Cole stopped abruptly when his phone's light caught movement through the kitchen window. 2 figures, dressed in dark clothing, were moving toward the stable from the east side of the property. Cole's blood ran cold. They weren't coming for the house, they were going for the horses. He typed frantically, "They're heading to the stable. The horses are in danger." Elena's face transformed in the phone's glow. Fear disappeared, replaced by fierce determination. She typed, "Shadow will panic. Grace and Mercy too. If they're frightened badly enough, they could hurt themselves trying to escape. We need to call the sheriff," Cole typed. "No time," Elena typed back. "By the time Crawford gets here, the horses could be injured or dead. We have to go now." Every instinct told Cole to keep Elena safe in the house, to handle this himself. But he also knew that without her, calming terrified horses in the dark would be nearly impossible. They needed each other. "Together then," Cole typed. "But you stay close to me." They exited through the back door, moving quickly but quietly across the snow. The cold bit at exposed skin, and their breath formed white clouds in the moonlight. Cole carried the shotgun at the ready, his eyes scanning constantly for threats. As they approached the stable, Cole heard it, the sound of panicked horses, hooves striking wood, frightened whinnies cutting through the night air. Someone had already gotten inside. Cole pushed open the stable door carefully. The interior was chaos. Someone had opened every stall door, and the horses were in various states of panic, crashing into each other and the walls in the darkness. Cole could make out two figures trying to herd the animals toward the far exit, trying to scatter them across the open range where recovery would be difficult if not impossible. "Hey!" Cole shouted, raising the shotgun. "Get away from them!" One of the figures spun around, and moonlight through the open door caught the glint of metal in his hand. "A gun. Drop the weapon, old man," the figure called out. "We don't want trouble with you. We just got a job to do." "The job ends now," Cole said, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "Sheriff's already been called. You've got maybe 5 minutes to get off my property before you're looking at serious prison time." It was a bluff Cole hadn't had time to call anyone. But the two men exchanged glances, uncertainty flickering across what Cole could see of their faces. Behind Cole, Elena had slipped past him into the stable. She moved directly into the chaos, her hands already forming signs, her entire body language radiating calm authority. Shadow, wild-eyed and dangerous, was rearing up near his stall. Elena walked straight toward him without hesitation. "Lady, you're crazy," one of the intruders shouted. "That horse is gonna kill you." But Shadow's eyes found Elena in the darkness. She signed to him, her movements precise even in crisis. The stallion's front hooves came down, and his head lowered. He moved toward Elena, pressing his massive forehead against her chest. The effect rippled through the stable. Other horses, seeing Shadow come, began to settle. Elena moved from animal to animal, touching each one, signing to them, her presence like oil on troubled water. The two intruders watched in stunned disbelief. Cole took advantage of their distraction, advancing with the shotgun raised. "On the ground, now, both of you." "This is insane," one of them muttered, but they complied, lying face down on the stable floor. Cole kept the gun trained on them while reaching for his phone to actually call. "Sheriff Crawford." That's when the third figure emerged from the shadows. Marcus Gaines stepped into the stable entrance, backlit by moonlight. He held a pistol loosely at his side, and his expression was a mixture of rage and something else, hurt, maybe, or betrayal. "Elena," he said, his voice carrying despite the distance. "We need to talk." Elena turned, and even in the dim light, Cole could see the fear flash across her face before being replaced by something harder. She pulled out her phone and typed, showing it to Marcus. "We have nothing to talk about. Leave, now." "I can't do that," Marcus said, taking a step forward. "You're my wife. You belong with me. And I'm not leaving without you." Cole moved slightly, positioning himself between Marcus and Elena. "She doesn't want to go with you. That makes the decision pretty simple." Marcus's laugh was bitter. "You think you know her? You've known her, what, a month? I've loved her for 8 years. I know everything about her, her fears, her dreams, her weaknesses. And I know that underneath all this defiance, she still loves me too." Elena's hands moved in sharp, angry signs. Cole didn't know all the words, but he understood the meaning: pure rejection. "See what she's become?" Marcus said, gesturing wildly with the gun, making Cole's nerves scream. "She won't even speak anymore. Just those gestures, like some kind of animal. I can fix her, make her normal again. But not if she's here with you, enabling her delusions." "Her deafness isn't a delusion," Cole said carefully, watching the gun. "And she doesn't need fixing. She needs you to accept that your marriage is over and leave her alone. It's not over until I say it's over." Marcus's voice rose, the gun rising with it. "I've invested years in her, put up with her disability, tried to help her fit into normal society. And this is how she repays me. Running away, playing cowgirl with some washed-up rancher." The two men on the ground were starting to look nervous, clearly not having signed up for this level of drama. One of them spoke up. "Man, we were just supposed to scatter some horses, not be part of whatever this is." "Shut up," Marcus snapped. Then focused back on Elena. "Come with me now, and we'll forget all this happened." We'll start over somewhere new. But if you stay here, if you choose him over me, there will be consequences." Alina's jaw set in determination. She typed on her phone and turned the screen toward Marcus. "I would rather die than go anywhere with you. You don't love me, you never did. You love controlling me. But I'm not that frightened girl anymore. I'm done being afraid of you." Something in Marcus's face cracked. The hurt transformed fully into rage, and the gun came up, pointing directly at Cole. "Then maybe I take away what you've chosen instead of me. Maybe without your cowboy here, you'll remember where you really belong." Time seemed to slow. Cole saw Marcus's finger tightening on the trigger, saw Elena's eyes go wide with horror, saw his own death approaching in the form of a jealous man's desperation. Then Shadow moved. The stallion surged forward with explosive speed, placing his massive body between the gun and Cole. The shot rang out, deafening in the enclosed space, and Shadow screamed, a sound of pain and fury combined. But he didn't fall. The bullet had grazed his shoulder, drawing blood but not stopping him. Shadow charged at Marcus with all the rage he'd once shown to everyone, all the trauma and pain channeled into protecting the people who'd shown him kindness. Marcus tried to shoot again, but Shadow was too fast. The horse's shoulder hit Marcus in the chest, sending him flying backward into the snow outside the stable. The gun skittered away across the frozen ground. Cole rushed forward, kicking it further out of reach, while the two hired men scrambled to their feet and ran for their vehicle. Sirens wailed in the distance. Someone must have heard the gunshot and called the police. Marcus lay in the snow, gasping for breath, probably with cracked ribs. Shadow stood over him, snorting and stamping, ready to strike again if Marcus moved. The stallion's shoulder bled steadily, but his eyes were clear, focused, protective. Alina ran to Shadow, her hands immediately checking his wound while signing frantically apologies, gratitude, reassurances. The horse gentled under her touch despite his injury, trusting her completely. Sheriff Crawford arrived with 2 deputies, lights blazing. They took in the scene quickly, Marcus on the ground, the gun in the snow, Cole with the shotgun, Alina with the injured horse. Tommy's truck pulled up seconds later, the young man jumping out with his own weapon drawn before realizing the crisis had passed. The next hours passed in a blur of statements, arrests, and medical attention. A veterinarian Cole trusted came out to treat Shadow's wound, painful but not life-threatening. Marcus and his 2 accomplices were taken into custody, facing charges ranging from trespassing to assault with a deadly weapon to attempted murder. "He'll go to prison this time," Sheriff Crawford told Cole and Elena as the sun began to rise. Multiple witnesses, clear evidence, violation of a restraining order, weapon charges. "He's done." Elena nodded wearily, leaning against Cole. The night had drained her, but there was relief in her eyes too. Finally, after running for so long, it was over. After everyone left, Cole and Elena stood in the stable with Shadow. The horse was bandaged and sedated, but his eyes still tracked Elena's every movement. She placed her hand on his forehead, signing something private between them. "He saved your life," Elena typed on her phone, showing it to Cole. "He felt my fear for you and acted on it. That's the connection I've been trying to explain. It's not just about understanding them, sometimes they understand us too." "I owe him everything," Cole typed back. "I owe you everything. If you hadn't taught him to trust, to connect, he never would have done what he did." Elena smiled tiredly. She typed, "We saved each other. All of us. That's what family does. Family." The words settled into Cole's chest like a warm ember. This strange collection of damaged people and traumatized animals had somehow become exactly that, a family forged in crisis and held together by trust. A week later, Marcus pleaded guilty to multiple charges, facing a minimum of 7 years in prison. The restraining order was upgraded to a permanent no-contact order. Elena's lawyer in Oregon confirmed that the divorce could now proceed uncontested. Life at the ranch returned to its rhythm, but everything had changed. Elena moved into the main house, her choice, made without fear or hesitation. The partnership became official, with legal papers filed making her co-owner of the training operation. Inquiries poured in from across the region, people wanting to send horses to the woman who'd gained a reputation for working miracles. Shadow healed quickly, the scar on his shoulder a badge of honor. Elena started a program teaching other trainers her methods, not the inexplicable gift she possessed, but the observable techniques of patience, consistency, and genuine respect for animals as thinking, feeling beings. On Christmas Eve, as snow fell softly outside, Cole and Elena sat on the porch wrapped in blankets, watching the horses in their paddocks. Shadow grazed peacefully near the fence, occasionally lifting his head to check on Elena, still protective even in safety. "What are you thinking?" Cole signed to her. Elena smiled, signing back, "That I'm grateful. That I'm home. That sometimes the worst things lead to the best things if we're brave enough to keep going." "I'm grateful too," Cole signed. "For everything. For you." Elena leaned against him, and they sat in comfortable silence, watching their breath cloud in the cold air. The ranch that had been dying 6 weeks ago was now thriving. The man who'd been alone was now part of something bigger. The woman who'd been running had finally found a place to stand and fight. And in the stable, Shadow nickered softly, content in the knowledge that his herd, his strange, mixed herd of humans and horses, was safe together. And finally at peace. The story could have ended in tragedy that night when Marcus arrived with violence in his heart. But instead, it ended the way the best stories do, not with perfect happiness, but with hard-won hope, with scars that would heal, with people who'd faced their worst fears and survived them together. Elena had come to Montana looking for a place to disappear. Instead, she'd found a place to emerge stronger, braver, surrounded by creatures who saw her gift for what it truly was. And Cole had rediscovered something he thought he'd lost forever: the capacity to trust, to love, to build a future with someone who understood that broken things could be made beautiful again. As the Christmas lights twinkled across the ranch and snow continued to fall, two people who'd each been saved by an unexpected connection watched over the animals they'd healed and who had, in turn, healed them. And in the quiet of that holy night, surrounded by horses who'd learned to trust again, they knew they'd found something rare and precious. A place where being different wasn't a weakness but a strength, where wounds could transform into wisdom, and where the language of the heart needed no words at all. The courtroom in Helena was packed the day Marcus Gaines stood trial. Elena sat in the front row between Cole and Sheriff Crawford, her hands folded in her lap, her expression calm. She'd spent years being afraid of this man, but now, watching him in an orange jumpsuit and handcuffs, she felt nothing but pity. The prosecution presented overwhelming evidence. The arson investigators' report detailed accelerants and deliberate ignition points. Security footage from a gas station showed Marcus purchasing the materials. His hired men had turned on him immediately, testifying in exchange for reduced sentences. The body camera footage from that final confrontation sealed his fate. Marcus's lawyer tried to paint him as a heartbroken husband driven to desperation by love. But when the prosecutor played the recording of Marcus screaming, "You're mine, Elena. You'll always be mine," the jury's faces told the story. This wasn't love. It was obsession and control. The verdict came back in less than 3 hours. Guilty on all counts: arson, stalking, violating a restraining order, criminal threatening, conspiracy to commit assault. The judge sentenced him to 15 years in state prison with no possibility of parole for at least 7. When the gavel came down, Elena felt something release in her chest, a tension she'd carried for so long. She'd forgotten what it felt like to breathe without it, Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed them. The story had captured national attention: the deaf horse whisperer, the protective rancher, the dramatic rescue, the horses forming a living shield. It was the kind of story people wanted to believe in. "Ms. Rosewood," a reporter called out, "how does it feel to finally have justice?" Elena pulled out her phone and typed a statement she'd prepared. "Justice isn't just about punishment. It's about safety and the chance to rebuild. Today, I got that chance. And I'm grateful to everyone who stood with me: Sheriff Crawford, Cole Bennett, and every person who refused to look away when someone needed help." Cole squeezed her hand as they walked to the truck. Tommy was waiting by the vehicle, grinning. "Boss, you're not going to believe this. We got 3 calls today, people wanting to send horses to the facility." Word spreading fast. The drive back to Whitefish took 4 hours. Elena spent most of it looking out the window at the landscape she'd come to love: endless sky, rolling hills, mountains in the distance. Montana had given her something she'd never had before, a place where she belonged completely. When they pulled up to the ranch, the newly rebuilt stable stood proud against the evening sky. The insurance payout and a surprisingly generous loan from Brennan, who'd been impressed by the media coverage, had allowed them to create something special. Modern stalls with optimal ventilation, a heated training arena for winter work, and living quarters above the office where Elena had moved permanently. Shadow stood at the paddock fence as if he'd been waiting for them. Elena went to him immediately, signing her usual greeting. The stallion pressed his massive head against her chest, and she wrapped her arms around him. "He knew you'd need him when you got back," Tommy observed. "Been standing there for an hour." Cole joined them at the fence. "You know what I think? I think these horses understand more than we give them credit for. They know what today meant." Elena typed on her phone. "They always know. They feel everything: our fear, our joy, our relief. Shadow knows I'm free now. Really free. And he's celebrating with me." That evening, they gathered at the main house for dinner. Cole, Elena, Tommy, and Sheriff Crawford, who'd become a regular presence at the ranch. Elena had cooked, filling the house with the smell of garlic and herbs. "To new beginnings," Crawford said, raising his glass. "And to the bravest woman I've ever met." Elena blushed, signing thank you before typing. "I wasn't brave. I was terrified every single day. But Cole taught me something important. Being brave doesn't mean not being afraid. It means doing what needs to be done despite the fear." "Well, whatever you want to call it," Tommy said, "you've changed this place completely. A year ago, the boss was barely hanging on. Now look at us, thriving, expanding, becoming something special." Cole looked at Elena across the table, and the warmth in his eyes said everything words couldn't capture. After dinner, as Crawford and Tommy headed out, Cole and Elena walked to the stable for the evening check. The horses were settling in for the night, content and calm. Elena moved from stall to stall, as she always did, signing goodnight to each one, checking water buckets, adjusting blankets. It was her ritual, her meditation, her way of staying connected to the beings who understood her better than most humans ever had. In Shadow's stall, she found Cole waiting with a surprise. He'd set up battery-powered candles safe around hay and had laid out a blanket. His nervousness was obvious, which made Elena smile. "What's this?" She signed. Cole pulled out his phone and typed, "I've been thinking about this for weeks, waiting for the right moment. And I realize there's no perfect moment, just moments we choose to make important." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Elena's breath caught as he opened it, revealing a simple silver ring with a small turquoise stone, her favorite color. Cole typed quickly, "I know we haven't been together long. I know some people would say we're rushing. But I've never been more certain of anything in my life. You are my partner, my best friend, the person who makes every day better just by existing in it. I don't want to imagine a future without you in it." Will you marry me? Elena's hands trembled as she reached for her phone. Tears streamed down her face as she typed, "Yes, 1,000 times yes. You gave me back my life, Cole. You showed me what real love looks like, patient, respectful, empowering. I want to build everything with you." Cole slipped the ring onto her finger, and they kissed as Shadow watched over them. The horse that had brought them together, standing sentinel over this new beginning. The months that followed were a whirlwind. The Bennett Rosewood Training Facility officially opened, featuring Elena's revolutionary approach to equine therapy. Horses arrived from across the country, traumatized rescues, aggressive show horses, animals written off as hopeless, and Elena healed them. Not all at once, not with magic tricks, but with patience and understanding and that unique gift that allowed her to speak their language. Success stories piled up. A former racehorse named Lightning, who'd attacked his previous trainers, now performed in exhibitions. A Mari named Storm, who'd been headed for slaughter, became a therapy horse for children with disabilities. The media attention brought opportunities. A documentary crew spent 3 months filming Elena's work. Universities invited her to speak about animal communication and interspecies understanding. She became the face of a movement that challenged traditional training methods, advocating for approaches built on trust rather than dominance. But Elena's favorite moments weren't the public ones. They were the quiet mornings with Cole, drinking coffee as the sun rose over the ranch. The evenings in Shadow's stall, where she'd taught Cole to sign full conversations. The nights in their shared home above the stable, where they'd plan and dream and build their future together. They married in the spring, a small ceremony in the paddock with the horses as witnesses. Elena wore a simple dress the color of Montana sky. Shadow, wearing flowers braided into his mane by the local florist who'd become a friend, stood at the altar with them. When the minister asked if anyone objected, the stallion snorted loudly and everyone laughed. "I think that was approval," Cole said, grinning. Elena signed to Shadow. "Thank you for bringing me here. For trusting me. For showing me that broken things can heal." The stallion stepped forward and gently pressed his nose to her forehead, his own gesture of love and acceptance.